Okay, I want to welcome everyone to tonight's Torah study. We're going to be studying about the veil in the tabernacle and the altar of incense. So before we begin, let's just go ahead and pray. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commands and commands us to engross ourselves in Torah. Amen. Okay. Tonight, like I said, we're going to be talking about the veil in the temple, or in the tabernacle, and actually a little bit on the temple also. Let me go ahead and read this first scripture for anyone that may be calling in on the telephone. Exodus 26:31 through 33 says, "Make a fine woven linen curtain of blue, purple, and scarlet with cherubim. It is to be the work of a skillful craftsman. You are to hang it on 4 pillars of acacia overlaid with gold, their hooks being made of gold, atop 4 bases of silver. You are to hang the curtain under the clasp and bring the ark within the curtain of the testimony. The parachet will divide for you between the holy place and the Holy of Holies." Okay, now this veil that we're going to be talking about here tonight, I pulled up a picture again to kind of give everyone a visual as to the placement of things and kind of where they are within the tabernacle. And of course, here's the veil here, just half of it because it's a cutaway. But and then here is the altar of incense too that we'll be talking about a little bit about tonight. And you see on here that they've got 4 columns, 1, 2, and then 3 and 4 are hidden right there. But those 4 columns then would hold up the veil. And I think just for construction wise, looking at some of these pictures that people have come up with for the tabernacle, these columns up here would have been connected across the top of the tabernacle to provide rigidity to the tabernacle, and also to keep these pillars from turning over when they put the weight of the veil on top of it. So in this veil here is, of course, it's 15 feet wide and 15 feet tall. Now, we don't know how thick the veil was, but we do know that the veil in the tabernacle, or in the temple, they said in the Talmud it was 1 handbreadth wide, about 4 inches thick. This veil was. So we'll be talking about that here in just a minute when we get to that part. This is a picture of the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, and then I was making the reference to the temple itself. Later on, that veil was much larger, and it was just a different veil altogether. So this veil that we have here, it separated the holy place from the Holy of Holies. This area here. Whoops. Let's see. Get my drawing tools out here again. This area here being the holy place, and then of course this area back in here was the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was situated. And so this veil then, of course, kept it separated the Holy of Holies from the holy place, and this veil here is also very similar to, right here you can see the edge, in this cutaway you can see the edge here of the covering for the tabernacle. It was also, they're a lot alike, and then they were a little bit different too. That both of them were of fine linen, both of them had blue, purple, and red. Both had figures of cherubim. They were, skillfully woven or cunningly woven into the cloth, depending on what translation the translation that you wanted to use. The functions, though, were different. This covering here covered over the tabernacle and provided a ceiling. And if you go along with the theory that the boards were framework rather than solid boards, then you would also be able to see the covering as the walls. And but they both had the cherubim on them. And then this veil here, though, had a separating effect. But the covering, it made a beautiful ceiling for the holy place. And then this veil, of course, was the barrier. And only the high priest could go into the Holy of Holies. He's the only one that could pass by the veil, and that was only one day a year at Yom Kippur. Now, what I'm showing here is just the tent of meeting, and of course, as we know, outside the tent of meeting there was a courtyard that was, I think it was 100 cubits or 150 cubits. It escapes me right now on the sides, and about 75 cubits on the ends. And in the courtyard, that was where they had the brass altar, and where they burned the sacrifices, and also had the brass laver where the priests would wash their hands and feet prior to coming into the holy place to take care of things, the lamps and the bread and so forth, and also to put incense on the altar every day. So yeah, this only shows the tent of meeting, so that we could kind of get a place of where the veil was and in relation to the other parts. So okay, let's going on here. This fine woven linen, it was brought from Egypt. We talked about that last week, and I was talking with Pat today about this whole thing about this fine woven linen that the Israelites were able to procure from the Egyptians. Now, this linen was one of their major exports. They were known for their fine linen that you could actually almost, it was wispy. You could almost, you could see through it. It was light, and it was very strong. And some say that it was twice the fineness of what we can do with our regular weaving today. And so they brought this out of Egypt. And when you consider that all of the stuff that was in the tabernacle, that covering, which was 45 feet by or 42 feet by 45 feet for the linen, and then the front the veil was 15 by 15, and then the door was also 15 by 15. That was that's a lot of linen. That outer tabernacle, outer court of the thing was, about think of a football field with a screen all the way around it, and that's about what you got with this tabernacle, the whole tabernacle, and how much linen that would have had required. And so, to me, it was just incredible that these Egyptians would have given up this linen to the Israelites as they were leaving. The same with the acacia boards. We talked last week about, how much wood it would have taken to get, a beam made out of these acacia trees that, if you could only find, if you'd only, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you can only find straight wood the size of a toothpick sometimes. But the wood would have been something that I just don't know how in the world or what would have possessed these guys to bring out wood with them when they had to leave in such haste. So we don't really know what was in the mind of the people other than to get out of Egypt. But what they brought out was just incredible, to me, that they would have this fine linen brought out with them. Now the veil, it had the cherubim. Remember on the covering for the cherubim for the tabernacle, it had the cherubim woven or embroidered or somehow fixed into the weave so that you could see it on both sides. And so that was about the same kind of thing. And the Bible talks about that these were had to be put together by very skillful people or cunning people, it says, which leads me to believe, this was very, very, very special. Now, the colors that we see here, they're just about the same. They are the same. The color, the blue, the purple, the scarlet. Now this cloth, this linen, started out white. So the pictures that we saw previously here, it shows that where the whole thing is dyed, either blue or purple or red or whatever, and maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I kind of lean to the idea that it was mostly white with these colors woven into them, and I'll get into that in a minute as to why I think that. Of course, the blue briefly represented the heavens, and the purple was royalty, and the scarlet blood sacrifices. Now we know that the tabernacle was a forerunner or a type of the sacrifice that Yeshua did in his work, his salvation work for us. And so this was just a type of that, or a forerunner, a shadow of it. And so let's go to these colors here. The blue reminds us that Yeshua came down from heaven and to fulfill his work, and that blue also symbolizes, many times when you see it, that the blue is a symbol of heaven. When the elders went up on Mount Sinai and they had a meal, they had a fellowship meal with God himself up there. They said that they saw him, and under his feet there was like a pavement of sapphire. And of course we know that sapphire is blue, and so that is closely related to the heavens, and reminds us that Yeshua did come down from heaven. This Exodus, the Exodus reference is Exodus 24:10. They saw the God of Israel, and under his feet was something like a pavement of sapphire, as clear as the very heavens. So the purple that we have, it is the color of royalty. Now, this reason for purple being, a regal reputation, I guess it was, comes from the simple case that it's supply and demand. For centuries, I guess even well before Israel and the Exodus from Egypt, purple dye trade was it was centered around the Phoenician city of Tyre in modern day Lebanon. You may pronounce it Tyre. I don't know. It's I thought it was Tyre for many years until one of my friends he went up there, and that's the way he said that they pronounced it up there in the ruins, or the city around the ruins of Tyre. The Phoenicians, the Tyrian purple, came from a species of small snail that's now known as the Balanus brandaris, and it was so exceedingly rare that it became worth its weight in gold. And to harvest it, dye makers had to crack open the snail shell, extract a purple-producing mucus, and expose it to sunlight for a precise amount of time. It took as many as 250,000 of these snails, or mollusks, whatever they were, to yield just 1 ounce of usable dye. But the result was a vibrant and long-lasting shade of purple. So you can imagine how costly or how valuable that would have been for these guys. Maybe they got they were able to walk out of Egypt with purple dye. I don't know, because they're in the desert. They're not even on the seashore. How are they going to come up with this dye? But somehow they did. The clothes that were made from the dye were exorbitantly expensive. Said a pound of purple wool, wool that had been dyed purple, cost more than most people earned in a year. So it became, this purple became the calling card of the rich and famous. And so they said that the Tyrian purple resembled the color of clotted blood. I don't know. That's the shade that maybe it did have divine connotations. I don't know, but to me, clotted blood is not an attractive color. In fact, I was reading on the royalty of purple. Queen Elizabeth I of England forbid anyone in the empire to wear purple except for her very immediate family, because that was the color of royalty. And you saw that in the Byzantine Empire, the same kind of thing. And that lasted, the Byzantines were from about 300 AD, something like that time frame, all the way to like the 15th century. And then this color purple, then it became much more accessible when chemists figured out how to make synthetic dyes. Now, the color of scarlet or red, actually it has several meanings, and we see throughout the Bible that it can symbolize sin. In Isaiah 1:18, it says, "Come now, let us reason together, says Adonai. Though your sins be like scarlet, they shall be white as snow. Though be red like crimson, they will become like wool." And so this is just a kind of a poetic way that Isaiah is talking about sin becoming washed. And before we get too far away, Ray just reminded me that the blue is also another blue that is significant, is the techelet, which is the blue on the tzitzit, the strings, the fringes that we have on that the Jews had on their garments, the four corners of their garments, and it said the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, perhaps he didn't wear tzitzit when he was ministering, but he did have a long robe of blue. So it would have been quite impressive to see him with this blue robe. And I'd heard for years that the little mollusk that they used to make the techelet color was extinct, But now they're finding in the Mediterranean that it is making a big comeback. It wasn't extinct, and now that they're saying that it's coming back enough that they can actually use the things to make authentic blue for the Teclet blue. So that's kind of interesting as we're fast approaching the end days, So anyway, going back to the color of red, it can also be a picture of salvation, not only sin but salvation. Joshua in 2:18, talking to Rahab, which was the innkeeper, and people keep insisting that she was perhaps a lady with less than stellar reputation. It says, unless we come into the land, you tie, unless when we come into the land, it says, you tie this line of scarlet thread in the window through which you lowered us down, and gather to yourself in your house your father and mother and your brothers and all your father's household. So we see that this red was a symbol of their salvation. And Exodus 12:7, it says very famously what the red symbolized. You're to take the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the crossbeam of the house where they will eat it. They're talking about Passover, so that the blood, the red blood, was putting on the doorposts and the sides of the sides and the lintel of the door. That red was again a symbol of salvation. So that was at the end of the plagues, and the Israelites were told to kill an unblemished lamb, put the blood on the doorpost, so that the Spirit of God would literally pass over where they get, and that's where we get Passover from. Pass over the houses and spare them from death. So once again, the color blood is red. It is a reminder. Has two meanings. It was death because of the lamb shed its blood, but it was also redemption because it spared those who had it on their doorposts. And actually, it's got more than two meanings because, like we had said before, it did symbolize sin. It symbolized the sacrifice and the redemption. And also remember when God said that red or that blood is the symbol, or it says there's life in the blood. The life is in the blood. So that red that we see, it just reminds us that the life is in the blood. And so we don't know. I tried looking up on Chabad and the various other Jewish websites regarding the color red and what that symbolized, and the closest I got was that it was just a symbol of the blood that was in for the sacrifices. So going on here, I did want to mention that the cherubim guarded the Garden of Eden. Remember we talked when we did the part about the coverings, where the cherubim were placed outside the Garden of Eden to keep man from coming back in and eating of the tree of life and living in their sin forever. So we see the cherubim on the veil that separated the people from, or the priests from God, that these cherubim, again, symbolized that they were guarding. And throughout the Bible, cherubim were symbols of protecting the holiness of God. So that's why I say they symbolically guard the Holy of Holies. And it separated God from sinful man, the holiness of God from the sin of man. And there's other things that Red mentioned, that red is Adam, and Adam, of course, is very close to the word Adam, Adon. I think in the creation story, Adamah is humanity. So the blood and the red has, it's all intertwined, intermingled with with actually who we are and who God is. Even the word Adam can be seen as the blood of God. So Adamah is earth. So I'm trying to think of what the other word was for humanity. It was also talked about Adam being red or ruddy. The earth was red, and so just a lot of symbolism with the earth, and so it would make sense that you've got the heavens, the blue in the heavens, and the red of the earth, and then in the middle is Yeshua. And we're going to look at this picture of Messiah here in just a second. This veil is a picture of Messiah, and the veil hid the glory of God from the priest, like the true glory of the Godhead was hidden hidden from us in Yeshua, in his heavenly body. When he was on earth in his ministry, he looked like just a regular guy. There was nothing about him that we could look at that you could say nothing kind of made him stand out. He was not the tall, handsome Dudley Do-Right looking guy. And he wasn't like what the painters paint him today, where everybody else is kind of scruffy looking, and he's got this nice, clean-cut European view of him with the trimmed beard and the long hair. He did not have long hair, by the way, and I keep saying that so that maybe people will get the idea that he was not a Nazirite. And so anyway. This picture of Yeshua, Paul said in Philippians 2:6 and 7, he says, who, though existing in the form of God, did not consider being equal to God a thing to be grasped, but he emptied himself, taking on the form of a slave, becoming the likeness of men, and being found in appearance as a man. Remember the Garden of Eden, when the soldiers came to get him, they couldn't pick him out of the crowd there, and it took Judas Iscariot to come up and say, okay, this is the one right here, and where he gave him the oriental kiss on the cheek there. And so we see that this veil is kind of like Christ and the Messiah, in that we don't see the full aspect of God in him, because he's in his human ministry and human body while he was on earth. The colors of the veil also reflect the ministry of Yeshua. The linen was originally white. Like I said, that when they made it up, it was white, and then they dyed it for whatever colors they needed. It says, it was white, a picture of purity, the sinless nature of Yeshua. He was without spot or blemish. And the blue shows his origins in heaven, and then the scarlet shows us his blood that was shed for our sins. And the purple would be indicative of his royalty, because remember, he is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So even the colors that we see here can point to Yeshua in some aspects. The veil we saw and I wanted to bring this out in the two temples. The Solomon's temple and also in Herod's temple. The veils had the same function. They separated the Holy of Holies from the holy place, and tradition tells us in the temple that, you remember, they were supposed to have these columns that held up the roof and the structure between the holy place and the Holy of Holies. Well, supposedly there was about a cubit width in there, And so the priests, they didn't know whether to hang the veil on the Holy of Holies side or on the holy place side. So they just put two veils up. Now, again, this is coming from literature of the day. I think it was certainly in the Talmud, and I believe Josephus may have mentioned it also. And it said that the veils, that there were two veils, and they were 60 feet high and 30 feet wide, and that corresponds with what they think was the size of the temple itself. It was 30 feet wide, but very, very, very tall, as opposed to the tabernacle, which was basically it was 15 by 15, so it was square and then long. Well, the temple, after Herod got through with it, it was a magnificent worship place. Kind of reminds us of years later on where when in the Catholic Church they would build these huge cathedrals, and the more opulent and the more the higher the steeple and the higher that they could get that cross, then the better it was. So these priests, it said that the 60 feet high, 30 feet wide was the veil, and a thickness when it was woven, they said the thickness was a handbreadth, so it's about 4 inches. And the Talmud says that it took 300 priests to hang the veils. And again, the Talmud talking there, the writings in the Talmud said that they replaced the veils every year. Now, again, that's extra biblical. We don't, there's nothing in the Bible that talks about that, but it did say in the Talmud that they replaced it every year, and they had people employed year-round. Just once they would replace that veil, then they would start working on the next year's replacement. So when we read about the veil in the temple, and this would have been Herod's temple that was in place when Yeshua was there. So when God ripped that veil from the top to the bottom, at the time of Yeshua's crucifixion, you can kind of get an idea of the magnitude of what that would have looked like or what that would have been, because the veil tore, and then it says, and then there were earthquakes. So the earthquake would not have torn the veil. And plus, let's face it, I mean, if they had an earthquake big enough to rip that veil from top to bottom, you would think that the whole temple would have collapsed in itself. So Doug said, did they ever clean the veil? And if so, were there specific instructions regarding that? If not, I imagine it would have collected a lot of sand and dirt. There was no instructions for cleaning the veil, and for the tabernacle anyway. Now, we do know that, like I said, in the temple they would replace the veil. And I would suspect that there would have been, soot maybe from the burning of the incense and from the menorah. That they would have gotten dirty. But perhaps again, we see that maybe divine intervention in that. Remember that the people, when they were in their 40-year sojourn throughout the wilderness, it said that their clothes never wore out and their shoes never wore out. So there was something divine there, a divine intervention. I would suspect the same with all of the sacrifices that were done every day, the bull and the goat every day, or whatever the sacrifice was, in the morning and the evening. That's an awful lot of blood, and just blood and guts and all sorts of stuff, the manure and that would have to have been taken care of. And, that would have been just a terribly nasty place. And you would think that there would be all sorts of disease and flies and everything, but the Bible doesn't mention anything about that. And so I suspect that, again, God took care of the place and cleaned it all up. And perhaps he did the same thing with the veil, the covering in the tabernacle. I don't know, because remember it lasted 400 or 500 years. So anyway, that's a good question, and I don't know of any place in the Bible where they talked about cleaning the veil. But the ripping of the veil in the temple later on, that would have been 1,500 years after 1,400 years, something like that, after the Mosaic tabernacle was built. This ripping away of the veil, it symbolized that man was no longer to have the blood of bulls and goats atone for his sin, and that no more would there have to be a high priest to go on, an earthly high priest that would come and be our intercessor, or our go-between between God and us, because Yeshua and his perfect sacrifices ended the requirement for the bull and goats. And then he himself became the heavenly intercessor. The writer of Hebrews put it this way in Hebrews 10:19 through 21. It says, "Therefore, brothers and sisters, we have a boldness to enter into the holies by the blood of Yeshua. He inaugurated a new and living way for us through the curtain, that is his flesh." So he's equating the veil. It says through the curtain, that is his flesh. So he's equating the curtain to Yeshua and his flesh. So I like the curtain was torn. The flesh of Yeshua was torn. And it says in the verse 21, it says, "We also have a Kohen Gadol over, that's a high priest, over God's household. So let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and body washed with pure water." And these verses here in Hebrews are kind of reminiscent of the practice in the day, when they had the sacrifices, where they would take the blood and sprinkle the blood on the Ark of the Covenant, and then on the altar itself, and the priests would have to wash their bodies before going into the holy place, and then certainly the high priest would have had to go through the holy, go through a whole bunch of cleansing before he went into the Holy of Holies. So that kind of gets us down to the incense. Now we're going to go to the just briefly mention the entrance of the tent. That again was made of blue, purple, and scarlet, and finely twisted linen, basically the same as the one for the Holy of Holies, and then the screen over the top. But there were 5 pillars of acacia and overlaid with gold, and so this was hung on 5 pillars, and to cast 5 bases of bronze. Now the difference between this wall and the one for the Holy of Holies, this one had 5 columns, and they were in a base of bronze. The other one was 4 columns and in a base of silver. Now I could not really come up with something that I'm comfortable with talking about as far as the to go out there and say, yeah, this is the gospel, as to why there were 4 4 columns for going into the Holy of Holies and 5 columns to go into the holy place. But I do know that the bases of bronze out there where they're coming into the holy place, bronze and the laver and then the altar themselves are all of the same material. That is a symbol of judgment. So they would symbolically carry the judgment of man into the holy place, and then once it went into the Holy of Holies, then the silver was redemption. So we were redeemed through the interaction with God in the Holy of Holies. So again, there were same colors, but there were no cherubim on this one. It was just a coloring, and so therefore God was not blocking the way to come into the Holy of Holies, because there again into the holy place, because there again we got the menorah representing Yeshua as the light of the world, the showbread representing he's the bread of life, and then the incense altar was that symbolizes the prayers of the saints. So God did not want us to be restricted from those places. So anyway, let's look at this altar of incense quickly. I got to talk faster. Exodus 30 and 1 through 5 or 6 here says, "You are to make an altar of acacia wood for burning incense. It is to be square, 1 cubit in length, 1 cubit wide, and 2 cubits high. The horns must be of one piece with it. You are to overlay it with pure gold on top, all around the sides and over the horns. You are to make a crown of gold for it all around. Make 2 golden earrings for it under the crown on the 2 sides, and they will be holders for poles to carry it, and make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold." Now, I think that I put a picture. No, I did not. A picture of the altar of incense, and if you'll just bear with me just a second, I think I will just show it to you. One of the pictures that I had of that. Okay, here we go. Here is a picture. You should be able to see it on your screen. A picture of the, this is just something that somebody had come up with, and I don't know what it is, because I saw other ones that were just so ornate through the whole thing that, gold filigree that would have been just unbelievably complicated to come up with. But I did want to note that it's only got 2 rings. Now, it says on the side, some of the translations have said under in the corners, but that they had these 2 rings. And that's completely different in the between the other furniture. The table of showbread and the Ark of the Covenant. Both of those they had 4 rings, 2 on each side, and then the bar went through that, and they picked it up that way. So that I don't know when they were walking with that. Both of those things would not have been actually functioning at the time, and so when they were traveling. So if they went like downhill with it, the ark or the showbread table would necessarily have tilted at the same level as the priests were going up and down in it. So. But the altar of incense, then it would have kind of maybe been on a little bit like gimbals, where if the rings were large enough, and when the priests were walking with it, that it would have tried to stay level up on top, and then that way, if there was incense burning on it, and I don't know that there was, but anyway, it would have stayed a little bit more level. So again, the altar of incense, it was made out of wood, acacia wood. It was hard, indestructible, and again, from what we had seen on the others, that it was a picture of Yeshua's humanity. It was clad in gold. That's a picture of Yeshua's deity. So all in one. And they were told to burn incense in the mornings and in the evenings. Now incense represents the prayers of the saints. Now let's see, Exodus 30 and 34 says, Adonai said to Moses, take the sweet spices, and I don't know how to pronounce these things, stacte, onycha, and galbanum, the spices, and pure frankincense are to be in equal measures. So they would put these things together, and that was their incense. Now these are the four ingredients there, and depending on the way you read it, it could possibly there could have been some kind of sweet spices on top of all of this stuff that they used too. So we really don't know exactly what these things were. People talk about it, and they say, well, the stacte could have been maybe myrrh, that everybody said, well, it could be myrrh. And then I read other people that says, oh, no, it is definitely this or that or the other. So everybody had an opinion on it. Same with the onycha. Some say that it was the cap of the wing shell, which is the wing shell is called a strombus. But we do know that had been used for making some kind of incense. Galbanum is resin that comes from a fennel-like shrub or species. It's a woody, and it's not like the fennel that we would have that in our gardens where they make the bulb about this big and then some green leafy stuff coming out of the top. It was more of a shrub type of thing. And then the frankincense. And frankincense, of course, is sap that comes from the Boswellia. The genus or the tree that they actually get the best frankincense from is called Boswellia sacra. But they are very rare. They grow only in very dry, horrible places where nothing else will grow. These things will. I would say that they don't really thrive. They just kind of grow, and so that was the incense that was used for the tabernacle. And God says for them to don't use this incense for anything else. Just don't make it up, because this is only to be made up for the tabernacle worship, and so don't make anything like it. And the question we had a question today, with Pat and I were talking about this, and she says, "Well, I wonder if then because the temple is no more, the tabernacle is no more, sacrifices like that are no more, then what would be the prohibition of making up these things?" Or the some of the oils or perfumes or something like that. Would there be anything wrong with that? And so I'm just going to err on the safe side, and I would I don't think you should probably put these things together and try to make some kind of an incense out of them to mimic what was in the Bible. That's just me. Let's see. Ray said the horns are like a box track. The horns on the altar. On this incense altar. Said blood of the sin offering was actually smeared on these horns. And so anyway, the idea of making up this stuff, that's not for me. I saw one website where somebody actually made up this stuff and they would sell it to people. And they said, well, you just let the Lord lead you as to, what you want to do about it. And, to me, it's pretty well plain black and white. Regardless, it didn't say as long as the temple is standing, don't make this stuff. It just says don't make it, and in those proportions. So, I'm just not going to make it. The closest I get to frankincense is in the anointing oil that I use when we pray for the sick. So anyway, that pretty well concludes what I was going to bring to you tonight regarding the veil and the door of the tent of meeting and this altar of incense. That covers everything about the tent of meeting itself. And I believe when we first started, we had talked about the brazen altar and the laver. And I did look up melting temperatures, and I discovered that normal wood, when you just burn normal wood and not charcoal where you've got it superheated or whatever, that bronze or brass has a higher melting point, so perhaps it would withstand the wood. So that bugged me until I finally found that. And so Ray says in a comment that the Aaronic priesthood is eternal, and it is through the line of Phinehas, as we learned in our Parsha reading this last week, that God preserved the priesthood through Pinchas or Phinehas all the way down to because Zadok was a descendant of Phinehas, and it would be the descendants of Zadok that minister in the millennial temple too. So there again, you don't want to listen to me preach my sermon from yesterday about all of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll see. Doug has a question here. Okay. Doug says, okay, whoever had the job of tearing and rebuilding the tabernacle each time they travel, obviously the penalty of death for entering the Holy of Holies had to be called off during those times, right? Also was the task of moving done by the high priest or other tribesmen. The moving of the holy things were done by just one family within the tribe of Levi. They were assigned to do just the Ark of the Covenant, the incense altar, the menorah, and the table of showbread. That was assigned just to one family. And I suspect that what would happen then on the Holy of Holies is, remember, when they knew they had to leave, then God's presence in the form of the cloud and the fire would pick up and start traveling. And so at that point, God's presence had left the Holy of Holies, so that would tell them, okay, yeah, now we can go in there and break that down. So, okay, Ray asked about the purpose of the incense. The incense was representative of the and I had that in my notes and I've chased rabbits and forgot it. The incense was a symbolic of the prayers of the people. Remember when on the Day of Atonement, when the high priest would go in, the first thing he did when he went into the Holy of Holies, and he went in about 5 times during that day, and he would go in and he would bring the fire pan with fire from the altar. He would bring it in and set it down in front of the ark. Then he would come back in, and the Bible says that he would get 2 handfuls, a double handful of incense, and bring it in and place it on the fire pan so that it started making a smoke of the incense. And the smoke drifted up and mingled with the smoke and the cloud of the presence of God. Because remember, God was in there on the mercy seat. And so his presence, his smoke, and his fire was there. And that it mingled with the smoke that represented the people and the prayers of the people and the very essence of the people. And so as that rose up into the Holy of Holies, it mingled with it, and it made that intimacy and that communion with God. So that was maybe not the only purpose of incense, but it was also God had said that you do these things because it's a flavor, or a savor, a wonderful savor to the Lord. And so it was just something that he wanted them to do. But that was to me, that was what was the major aspect of the incense, and what it was. It represented man communing with God that on that one day of atonement.